question, beyond the perfunctory "how are you," since they'd met outside some 20 minutes before. From the time they'd entered the restaurant, his entire attention had been devoted to ordering and eating, though he had, at least, disengaged a few brain cells long enough to inform her of the best items on the menu. Come to think of it, he hadn't been very inquisitive online either. But Lily was good at asking questions through virtual chat. It was like doing research with a search engine. Type in a question, then browse through the resultant dump of information to find your answer. When asked a question, especially if said question had anything to do with himself, Jerry was obligingly verbose. He went into great detail, as long as that detail involved the 100 different titles in his grunge rock music collection, or his daring feats in the latest sneak attack against his group's unsuspecting, now no longer allies. It wasn't as if she'd had soaring expectations. She'd just hoped for some intelligent conversation about, say, books, or history, or philosophy, or anything that mattered, really. Some people improved upon face-to-face acquaintance. Jerry was not one of them. Neither was she, come to think of it, but she at least didn't bore anyone with loving descriptions of each book in her expansive personal library, unless she knew for a fact that the person was a bibliophile. Hands nervously smoothing down the dark fabric of her pencil skirt, she cast about desperately for an excuse to end the date. She intended to block Jerry Slate from her dating profile as soon as she got home. Through the babble of obscure gaming jargon coming from the other side of the table, an idea came to her. She concentrated on the fork she held in her hand and whispered the words for a simple heat transference spell, her other hand wrapped around the power anchor amulet she wore tied to her wrist like a bracelet. Her body heat began to seep into the piece of metal, making it grow warm as she grew cooler. When she judged it was sufficiently hot, she made a startled gesture, dropping it dramatically onto the table as she jerked back in her chair. "Ouch!" she yelped. "Huh?" Jerry said, stopping mid-sentence. It seemed to be his favorite word, along with "oh." "I wasn't paying attention and tried to pick up my fork. It's very hot. I think it burned my hand. They must have just washed it in an industrial washer." Jerry reached forward to touch the fork experimentally, hand stopping short as he felt the heat emanating from the offending utensil.
"Gosh, that is hot. Are you okay? You don't look so good."
Jerry's brow furrowed in confusion. Not even he was absent-minded enough to miss the fact that their silverware had been sitting, quite cool and harmless, for a good 15 minutes since they'd sat down. Lily made a show of feeling her forehead, hoping to redirect his attention. "I feel all clammy. I should probably go home. I could be getting sick. Thanks so much for the food." With a touch of guilt, she fled the restaurant, not looking back. If she had, she would have felt better. Jerry's momentarily stunned face quickly smoothed over as he noticed the untouched burger at her place and, obviously not wanting to waste food, began to demolish it as well. The warm summer air felt good on her face as Lily drove her Honda Civic down Ponce de Leon Avenue, heading back to Agnes Scott College campus. Her soft chestnut brown hair frizzed in the humidity, despite being pulled back into a severe bun. At least it wasn't whipping around her face and getting stuck in her glasses, as it would have been had she worn it down. Verdant foliage and colorful flowers crowded around the sidewalks, businesses, and houses lining the street. The abundant plant life was one of the things Lily loved most about Atlanta. It made the place feel less like a big city and more like a well-tended neighborhood. Plus, it reminded her of home in the Alabama backwaters. Pulling into the college's employee parking lot, Lily gathered her things and headed across campus toward McCain Library. Though originally founded as an elementary school in 1889, Agnes Scott had become a college by the early 1900s. God.